Well, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. You're watching Discussion Today with your host, Rajat Kane. In this episode, we'll take a look at the Heart of Asia Ministerial Conference and its significance from an Indian perspective. The Heart of Asia process is a regional initiative of Afghanistan and Republic of Turkey, which was launched on November 2011 in Istanbul with an aim to promote regional security, economic and political cooperation centered on Afghanistan through dialogue and confidence building measures. Well, since its inception, the process has become a key element in regional cooperation and has created a platform for Afghanistan's near and extended neighbours, international supporters and organizations to engage in constructive dialogue and to address the existing and emerging regional challenges. We'll discuss further on this issue. We are joined with a panel of two important guests, former Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar. Many thanks for joining us, sir, and senior journalist KV Prasad. Well, let me start with you, Ambassador Sajjanhar. Your first reaction, like how important is this, the Heart of Asia Ministerial Conference from an Indian perspective, and the larger question of peace and cooperation in Southeast Asia, South Asia, I beg your pardon?
Extremely important, Rajat, because I think what we are seeing is really the end game as far as Afghanistan is concerned.
Okay.
The end game started in 2020 on the 29th of February. In fact, it's been building towards it because the United States and many of the other NATO allies and their forces have been in Afghanistan for the last 19, 20 years. And I think there is a certain element of fatigue that has set in, not only as far as the United States is concerned, but also I think as far as the global community is concerned. So many of the presidents, the US presidents, whether it was Barack Obama, he had said that he will take back his troops in 2014. There was a significant reduction of the US troops. And then when Donald Trump came, he also made the same promise during his campaign. And because just before the elections, he wanted to send out a message to his own people, to his own constituency, that he's been able to get back his troops. And that is why this, what was known as the peace deal between the United States and the Taliban, that was signed on the 29th of February last year. And according to that, the United States would withdraw all its troops from Afghanistan by the 1st of May 2021. So the 1st of May 2021 is just round the corner, just about 30 odd days more. And so there has been a lot of activity. Now it was thought that when Joe Biden assumes the presidency, that there might be a bit of a rethink, or it was not really known as to what the position of President Joe Biden is going to be.
Right.
But it has been well known that Joe Biden has also been interested in withdrawing the American troops. After all, it's the longest outside confrontation involvement in a conflict that the United States has had. So there have been somewhat confusing signals coming out of the United States. Soon after swearing in, the Secretary of State Antony Blinken, he said that we will have to rethink. Then in his letter that he sent to the Afghan President Ashraf Ghani, it sought to be made out that the United States would stick to the timeline, to the time schedule as far as withdrawal is concerned.
Okay.
Although Joe Biden himself has said that we will have to give it a rethink. So this meeting is very important, coming at the time as it does. And of course, Afghanistan is extremely important for India because security, stability, peace in Afghanistan is very intricately linked to the peace and security in India. So the presence of Dr. S. Jaishankar, the External Affairs Minister, at the Heart of Asia conference in Dushanbe is very significant for this purpose. And also, let me add, because of the strategic partnership that India enjoys with Tajikistan, we have been having good relations, good exchange of visits between India and Tajikistan. And that also, I'm sure, will be taken forward. The bilateral partnership will also be taken forward in addition to the discussions on peace and security in Afghanistan. And the last point here would be that since there would be so many world leaders who would have foreign ministers of so many countries who would have got together, it will provide a very good opportunity to Dr. Jaishankar to have interaction with his counterparts, let's say the foreign minister of Iran, from Central Asia, of Russia and other countries. Rajat.
Right, right. Many thanks, Ambassador Sajjanhar, for your opening remarks. Certainly, there are a lot that India is looking forward to this Heart of Asia conference. KV Prasad, your reaction. Let's start let's broad-based discussion and start from the point of view of, say, India's ties with Afghanistan and importance of a stable, peaceful Afghanistan for India.
Yeah, I think from the very start, Indian position has been that the discussions, Afghan issues should be Afghan-led, Afghan-controlled, and Afghan-owned process. Of course, today when External Affairs Minister Jaishankar, in his inaugural address to the Heart of Asia conference, he said for a durable peace in Afghanistan, we need a genuine double peace. And he also goes on to say that India has been supportive of all the efforts being made to accelerate dialogue between the Afghan government and the Taliban,
right,
including intra-Afghan negotiations. Now, I think this is a very significant statement. Also, when he prefaced this with the state that what the people are going to, what the Heart of Asia is going to discuss is very, the stakes are very high, but the consequences are no less insignificant. So, everybody is acutely aware, India is pinpointing to the members who are participating in this Heart of Asia conference. Some 14, 15 countries are in it, and about 17 on odd are who also participate, and about 10 to 12 organizations are also part of it. So it's a quite wide, encompassing discussion. So I think the focus is there, and of course, given the context and the broad base, as Ambassador Sajjanhar pointed out, everybody, the world is looking forward what's going to happen on May 1. I think the earliest indication of what we heard was when Joe Biden held his first physical press conference in the White House just last week, when somebody asked him directly a pointed question, will you withdraw, will we withdraw on May 1, or will America withdraw on May 1? He said, we intend to. But then it was not categorical, because they left it a little more thing that while they're committed, there are other pieces they think should fall in place. So that being the case, and India has a very high contribution, some $3 billion of investment in terms of supporting infrastructure development, and the latest being a water dam for supplying our drinking water to Kabul. So, well, we can discuss those points later, but I think the Heart of Asia conference is an important process. As you mentioned, 2011 it started, the 9th round is here. So we'll have to wait and see. And just to add to what Ambassador Sajjanhar added, I think one of the most significant things that people of India would also look at the diplomatic and the strategic affairs is, will there be a pull aside or a possible chance of a meeting between the foreign minister, Mr. Jaishankar, and his Pakistani counterpart?
Okay. Right, right. Thanks, Mr. KV Prasad, for the opening remarks. Ambassador Sajjanhar, both of you have underlined the US intent, of course, like in how going forward we'll see if they withdraw troops or not. How much an important that factor is it for the regional stability?
Oh, it is very significant. I think the Afghan government in Kabul has been able to stay there because of the US presence. If the United States reduces its presence, it stops support to the Afghan government, to the Ashraf Ghani government, then of course its stability, its viability, its continuation, that will come under a very serious question mark. So that is why it is absolutely imperative. And that is why I think the United States has also been saying, and the regional governments have also been thinking that they really have to step up to the plate. Because, as I mentioned earlier, there has been a global fatigue as far as engagement in Afghanistan is concerned.
Right.
So, if the United States, of course, when President Trump signed this agreement with the Taliban, the United States signed this agreement. It was actually Zalmay Khalilzad, the US negotiator for the Afghan peace talks. When he signed this agreement on the 29th of February, at that time, the United States had about 10,000 troops there. It is a significant come down from, let's say, 140,000 troops that were there during the initial years that Barack Obama had increased the numbers there. And in fact, even after Donald Trump came and his first South Asia strategy in August of 2017, he'd also mentioned that he is going to send in more troops, and he sent in about 4,800 troops there. And he had thought that an additional number of troops are going to make a very significant difference, but it did not. And the Taliban has been gaining ground over these years.
Okay.
And now that the US troops are coming out, they have been reduced to 2,500. It is also not very clear that going forward, how much of financial support that the United States and that the global community is going to provide to the Afghan government going forward. So I think there are big question marks, there are big uncertainties. But definitely the continued association and the continued presence of the US troops in Afghanistan is some sort of a guarantee to the peace and stability of the nature that it exists and of the continuation of the Ashraf Ghani government.
Right. Ambassador Sajjanhar, like before I go off to Mr. Prasad, just one small question. You said that Taliban is, it's gaining foothold over there. By that, what are the ramifications of the larger peace process?
The ramifications are huge because, this is when the agreement was signed in February 2020. The United States called it the peace deal because they thought that, there would be come down in violence, ultimately there would be ceasefire, there would be peace, there would be negotiations between Taliban and the Ashraf Ghani government. But none of that has really happened. Violence has not come down. Violence is going on as it is. So it is the fact that although the United States has mentioned that it is going to withdraw, but Taliban has been extending its control. And over the last 20 years, just because of the fact that the Taliban is receiving its support from Pakistan, it has been getting safe havens, it has been getting funding, it has had this territory to which it can withdraw whenever there has been pressure on it in Afghanistan. And it has been able to withdraw and then regroup itself, re-strengthen itself and come here. And they have been expanding their control over the territory. You would recall that sometime 2 years ago, they had even gone so far as up to the border, up to the boundary with Tajikistan, and they had taken control of Kunduz, the major important city of Kunduz, and they were there for a little while. So the Taliban has no great interest in having serious negotiations with the Ashraf Ghani government because the Taliban considers the Ashraf Ghani government as a government that has been imposed on Afghanistan by the occupiers. And so it knows that once the United States moves in, then they would be able to get total control over the country. Right now, what the United States is offering them is a share in the power, maybe 50% of seats, and that will be an interim government, and there'll be negotiations on the constitution. But they know that once the United States withdraws, the Afghan government will really not be able to withstand the pressure and the attacks from the Taliban. So that is very, very significant.
Right. KV Prasad, sir, I mean, say, in the hypothesis, if US withdraw troops from Afghanistan, what role do you see of regional powers over the regional countries around Afghanistan and in particular India? It's just a hypothesis we're talking of, sir.
Well, let's get it this way. The question is, the whole world and everybody, as I mentioned, is looking at what's going to happen once the American troops withdraw their boots from the ground in Afghanistan. Now, this has been something that has been in the talks for more than a decade. If you remember, as Sajjanhar put out a figure, 140,000 troops were there. That was a surge period during Obama period because they thought they'll consolidate. Then came the drawdown. Number of people were withdrawn because then they realized it. Now, after 20 years, nearly the battle is, and remember, Afghanistan war came around the time there was a fatigue in the Iraq war. And that was the campaign around which President Obama ran his campaign, stay the course, leave the course. And so from there on, you have moved on to Afghanistan. And today the argument in US, or rather one of the larger debates is it's a never-ending war. I mean, so I think those are the issues the Americans are trying to find out. But at the same time, the strategic community, the Pentagon, and probably other aspects, we have a very, very clear understanding as to the fear of withdrawal. Will it do away with all the gains that the US has been able to make in that region? That's a very significant area that they're looking at. And it is here that other regional forces are trying to shore up its own understanding of the region. Remember, India, of course, has a very, because apart from extended neighborhood, we have got a very long time historical ties, friendly people-to-people ties. But with Taliban, we have had a very, very negative experience. We've had, I think, nobody can forget what happened during the 1999 hijack.
Right.
So we had a very situation we all remember very rightly. So these are the issues that we carry. At the same time, you need to move forward and see how best you can deal with the situation. And I think significantly, just about earlier this year, we had the National Security Advisor, Mr. Ajit Doval, traveling to Afghanistan. We had a very high-level visit of the Afghan government coming into India. And this came around the time when there were reports that India was being kept out by a dialogue process where Russia and China were trying in, probably at the behest of Pakistan. Now, all these are areas that one needs to look to. Regional forces are trying to, because immediate neighborhood and the extended neighborhood has a direct stake, and they will get affected. So that's why probably that gets addressed partly in this Heart of Asia conference. And one of the issues that the External Affairs Minister highlighted is the challenges of to make the area free of terrorism, violent extremism, drug and criminal syndicates. Now, these are elements that everybody is going to look at.
Right. But Sajjanhar, you said that US is at the best, like what the deal between US and Taliban would be to have a say in the interim government or participation in the interim government. What do you envisage of such an arrangement, if we choose to call it, in future for the larger question of stability and peace in Afghanistan?
You know, actually, if there is any sort of an interim government, that means the credibility of the Ashraf Ghani government is completely destroyed.
Right.
Even when the United States signed the agreement with the Taliban on 29th February, you know, it was a deal between the US and Taliban. The Afghan government was not there to sign that agreement. So it is, really affecting very negatively, adversely affecting the credibility of the Ghani government. And what it means is Ashraf Ghani has offered elections that, rather than having an interim government, because Ashraf Ghani is completely opposed to any sort of interim government. What it really means is that the Taliban, which has been perpetrating so much of violence, so much of destruction, so much of killings as far as Afghanistan is concerned, that they are just able to walk into the government and have power. And this is against the democratically elected government of Ashraf Ghani. And everyone knows that the Taliban is not going to be satisfied with just being a part of the government, even 50% of the government. They want total control of the government. So I think this is definitely not going to be a workable solution.
Right.
And there are two things. One is, of course, the United States wishes to withdraw. United States, it has become quite untenable, as Mr. K.V. Prasad mentioned. It has been come to be known as the never-ending war. And definitely, Joe Biden, he might have his differences with Donald Trump, but this he does not want to extend the U.S. presence for a very long period. He might withdraw the troops by 1st May, or it might be extended by a few months, maybe up to October, November, or something of that sort. But it is not going to go beyond that. So that is number one, that the United States will definitely withdraw from there. As far as the Ashraf Ghani government is concerned, they have said that we would be happy to have elections. But Taliban will have none of that. In fact, even when they came to power in 1996, they had no elections at that time. So it will really be a death knell as far as the Ashraf Ghani government is concerned, as far as democracy is concerned. So, going forward, what has been mentioned is that the current constitution will be used as the template, but it will be negotiated as to what the fresh constitution would be. And there are some red lines that have been drawn, that it would be democratic, that the gains of the last 20 years in terms of the rights of the minorities, in terms of the position of the women, in terms of the education of girls, and so many other aspects, that they would be preserved, that they would not be given up. And I think that is going to be a huge challenge, because, and also another thing, that the name of Afghanistan is not going to be changed. It is not going to become the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan as the Taliban would want it.
Okay.
So I think there are a number of markers in the sand that have been made, but how much they will be honored, how much they will, the Taliban will abide by them, I think that's a huge question going forward. Because the Taliban knows that the withdrawal of the US troops really signifies a defeat of the United States, and that time is on their side, and United States doesn't have, or the Afghan government does not have much choice as far as the future arrangements in Kabul and in Afghanistan are concerned.
Right. That's very important, Ambassador Sajjanhar. Mr. KV Prasad, you also agree that any participation, or for that matter, any stake of Taliban in any interim government would be detrimental for larger peace and stability of Afghanistan and henceforth the region?
See, given the track record that we have had, so this is one of the conclusions that everybody is looking at, and that is why the skepticism about how would Taliban act when it tries to get into the seat of power. And that's what precisely we have been seeing. And in fact, one of the mentions in the is targeted killings of civilians has gone up by some 40-45% in the last 1 year, which is post, if you say, probably is a post time when they agreed to reduce the violence. So the reduction of violence, which was part of the pact with the United States, has not really happened, and something which was even flagged during President Trump's time. Now that's something the America would like to bring Taliban and try to hold them responsible for that. But the May 1 deadline is something looming, just 31 days away from where we are today. And the Taliban obviously is already making its statement from track that if America does not do what it has promised to do, then it's like it's over. So we don't know. There's still a lot of ponderables, but of course it'll depend, because the past record of Taliban since '96 onwards, till the U.S. troops landed there and did what it did. This is what leads to all the skepticism about how would Taliban act from where it is once it gets a power sharing arrangement, if it agrees to.
Right. That's really important. So many thanks, KV Prasad, sir, for giving us insight into the power matrix of Afghanistan, and many thanks, Ambassador Sajjanhar, for just telling us how important is it to have a peaceful and stable Pakistan for the larger peace and stability of the region. Well, that's it. We leave it there on this note. So clearly, we look forward to the Heart of Asia conference, and of course, like the takeaways in terms of having peace and stability across the region. Well, that's it in this edition of Discussion Today. Thank you. Goodbye.